Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm going to be showing you how we can set up a NuxtJS view application with Firebase Web Auth. And we're actually going to be using the pre-built Firebase Web Auth UI and integrating that with our application. We'll cover how to use various sign-in methods like Google and email, and also how to protect our routes so that only authenticated users can access certain pages. I haven't actually seen many videos for this, so I thought it would be useful. But anyways, on screen is what I've got is what we'll be doing, and this is pretty much just the boilerplate NuxtJS app that gets created, but I've added on this login page here which has this signing component, which is actually sort of a wrapper for the Firebase Web Auth UI, and I've also got the basic pages that come with the template, so this dashboard and page 2, which I've gone ahead and protected so that you need to be authenticated to access those pages. So I'm trying to click on these now, nothing's happening because I'm not signed in. If I go ahead and sign in with Google, let's just take a second. I should get rerouted to the root of the application, which is that dashboard right here. And if I try to access page 2 now, I can get there and back to the dashboard. And if I actually type in here login, I don't have a link for it, but I come back here and actually see my name here because I'm signed in now. So if I go back to the dashboard and sign out, I will get routed back to the login page and I can't access these 2 pages again. So that is what we're going to be building. It's not going to take very long, but we'll jump straight into it. Okay guys, so before continuing on with this video, a prerequisite of this is that you have a Firebase account, because obviously we're going to need this for our authentication. So if you haven't got an account already, go ahead and grab an account and you'll be able to continue along with the rest of the video. So anyways, what we're going to do is just create a new project from here, from the firebase.google website. So I'll just say, if I go to my console actually, sorry, now here I can add a project. So I'm just going to add a project and we'll say, I don't know, we'll call this Nuxt Firebase Auth, something like that. Just go ahead and click continue. If you don't mind about the other analytics options and stuff, I'll just create a new account. Just like that, and I'll say my region is Australia for me. Okay, so while this is going on over here, I'm just going to go to our VS Code and just open up an empty folder. Alright, cool. So from our empty folder, I'm just going to open up a terminal session and we're going to run the create Nuxt application command. So that's just npm init Nuxt app and call it whatever you want. So I'll just call this Nuxt Firebase. And then once that's done downloading, just sort of return through these options here. So we're going to be using JavaScript. I'm going to be using npm for my package manager, and I prefer to use Vuetify just because I'm familiar with it for the sort of the front end components. And we want Axios. All this stuff doesn't really matter because we're not actually going to be using any of this, but I'll just put prettier as well. And testing framework is none. And this one is important. So the rendering mode, we want single page app, right? We're not using server-side rendering. And then I'll say deployment target is a server. Again, all this stuff isn't really going to matter because it's not relevant to the video. I'll just say there's no version control either. All right, so that's going to go ahead and install. Sweet, so once that's done installing, we can see our app is ready to basically spin up if we want to, but there's still a couple of things we need to do. So I'm just going to cd into our directory, so Nuxt-Firebase, and we still need a couple more modules to work with Firebase. So I'll just say from here, npm install Firebase, and then after this we're going to install the Nuxt Firebase module as well. And you can see here, this is how we're going to basically configure it, with some exception to our services section. We're going to change that a little bit. But you can see here, we're going to need the config, which is going to come from our Firebase project. So once you get to this stage here, we're just going to install that module, and we'll say npm install at nuxtjs/firebase. And we'll let that do its thing. And while that's happening, we're going to go back to our Firebase console. And if our project is ready, we're going to go continue, come into our project, and from here we can get our SDK. So we want web, and I'll just say I don't want hosting. Call your web app whatever you want. I'll just say Nuxt Firebase again. Register the app, And then here it's going to give us our config, which is basically just like an API key. It's not really like a secret key or anything like that. So don't be concerned about having this exposed on your front end. So we'll just say const Firebase config there is what we want. Actually, I just need this bit here really. Okay, cool. And now if we go back to VS Code, hopefully this is done. Yep. And we're going to go to our nux.config.js, and we're just going to add in what we need to specific to how Nuxt Firebase module is sort of specifying it here, right? So under our modules section, we're just going to put in the Nuxt Firebase module basically. So that's just going to look like this. So we put a array in, and we'll say at NuxtJS/Firebase, and then we want an object as well, which will have our config in it. And we'll say config equals object, which we'll just now get from our Google Firebase store, or SDK, sorry. So all this here, I'll just copy this in, just like that. And then services we want to use, so we want to use auth. But with our services, we're going to use auth, but we also need to set up basically a listener to the authentication object, or the auth object. And that's documented out here on NuxtJS Firebase as well. So pretty much we want to set up like this. So we're going to initialize the auth, and we're going to have these mutations and this action as well for when the auth state changes. So basically what we want to do from here is just say auth equals an object with on auth state changed mutation, and this will be on auth state changed mutation. So this is the action it's going to call basically when the auth state changes there. And similarly with this one as well, on auth state changed action. Sweet. I think that should pretty much do it for the services auth section and the modules section here as well. There is something we need to do up here at the very top. This is important, so just we'll just comment this out, and we're going to say here mode is SPA, okay, and then we can go ahead and save this. So we'll just save that off, and I'm actually just going to fire this up now just to see what it's sort of looking like so far. npm run dev. Alright, so that's just building out. Sweet, so that's ready. Alright, so we'll just open this up now on localhost 3000. And you can see here now, if I put this over to this screen, we've got our default NuxtJS application up and running, okay? And I actually just want to change something as well. I just prefer to have light mode, so say dark is false, just save that off. And that should build out in a second. I think that's just still thinking about it. I'll just refresh this. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to leave these two pages exactly how they are at the moment, right? We can access both these pages. There's no sign in or anything like that. But we're going to go ahead now, just build a basic login page, which can then hold our sign-in component, which will be a sort of wrapper for the Firebase Web Auth UI. Alright, so if we just go to pages now, and we'll create a new one in here called login.view, and I'll just say view, here we go, and then I'll just say put a div in here, and we'll just do a v container, and then I'll just have a h1, I'll just say welcome. Alright, and now we'll just take a quick look at what this looks like. So if I just save this off, I should be able to actually navigate this to this now. There's no button link for it obviously, but if I go here and go /login, NuxtJS will take care of the routing for us, because if you're not familiar with NuxtJS, anything that you create in these pages folders will be automatically linked in to the router, thanks to the special magic that NuxtJS does under the hood for us. Alright, so from here, we've got our just login page, right? There's nothing else really going on with it at the moment, but what I do want to do is just in our welcome section, I want to have a span, which will just say if there's a current user in here, we'll display the current user's name, right? So I'll just say span with the v-if equal to current user, and then here we'll put in current user dot display name. So we'll get the authenticated user display name, and if there's a user here or signed in, we'll actually display their name. Okay, so now what we want to do is just add in the signing component in a second, but we have to actually build this out first, so that's what we're going to do now. Alright, so I'll just save this off and go down to components, and we'll call this signin.view. Alright, so this one's going to be a little bit different because basically all we need to do is just pretty much create a empty template with a div that the Firebase Web Auth UI can sort of grab onto and populate what it needs to. So I'll just say view, and then here I'll do a div, and we're going to need to get this an ID in a second. I'll just call this Firebase UI Auth container, something like that. Alright, so before we actually keep going ahead with this now, we're going to go back to our Firebase console and just set up the authentication methods that we want. So going back to here, continue to my console, and go to the top here, it says authentication, and then we can go ahead and get started. Now here it's asking us what methods we want to use for sign-in, so email and password already comes natively, but I'm also going to add Google as well. So I'll just say enable for this, and I'll just have my own email for the support email. That's okay. Save that off, and then that is pretty much all we need to do. Alright, so now we can jump back to our VS Code, and we'll actually keep building out this component. And I'm actually going to be taking notes pretty much from the Firebase Google Docs, which sort of outlay how to set this up, right? But we'll be doing it a little bit differently because we have to get it within a view component. Okay, so first off, I'm just actually going to get rid of the styling tags here because we don't actually need them. And then from here, we're going to actually bring in now the Firebase UI. Actually, I think just thinking about it, I don't think we actually have that installed yet. So I'm just going to break out of this application. Now from here, we'll just go ahead and install the Firebase UI module. So I'll say Firebase UI, I'll just do save as well. Alright, so now once that's done installing, what we're going to be doing is pretty much instantiating the Firebase UI, and we're going to be doing that through the lifecycle mounted method of our view component. So we'll say mounted, and here we'll bring in our Firebase UI, so const Firebase UI equals require Firebase UI. And we're also going to want our CSS file for the Firebase UI. So we'll say Firebase UI dist Firebase UI.css. And now we'll say const UI equals Firebase UI .auth auth UI get instance or new Firebase UI .auth UI this.fire.auth. And now this.fire.auth, this.fire, the context of that is actually provided through the NuxtJS Firebase module. So if I bring this over here, we can see here that the Nux Firebase states that it injects two main utilities into our context, the fire and fire module. So that is pretty much how we're able to access that from here. Okay, so now I'll just create an object for the config, and we'll say sign in options, and we'll say this.fire module.auth, and now we can list the sign-in methods that we want from Google. So the email auth provider, and this is going to be provider ID, and this fire module.auth.google auth provider ID. Okay, so that's pretty much going to do us for the config object of our sign-in. Now we also need to add in some sign-in successful URLs. I'll just say this is the root of our application. And now we want to have some callbacks as well. So after the sign-in's done, what do we want to do pretty much? So sign-in callbacks will take an object which can have a couple functions in here, but we'll just do sign-in success with auth result. And we'll just console log the success. And when it is successful, we're going to pretty much navigate to our root of our application, right? So I'll just say window.location equals that. Alright, so that will pretty much do it for the config object. Now we can actually go ahead and instantiate the UI via UI start. And this takes in two parameters, as you can see here, the element that it's going to be binding onto, and then also the config object. So the element that we're going to be binding onto is our div up here. So we'll just state the ID. So I'll just copy this up, just like that. And we'll put it passing our config object as well. Alright, so I can pretty much just save this off now, and I think that should be okay. Now let's actually bring this into our login component. So going back to login.view, just down here now we'll just say components, and we'll just say sign in. So just at the top here, we'll just say import sign in from components / sign in.view. Cool. Alright, so I think we can just pretty much save this off, and that should be okay. I actually want to start running our application now, so I do npm run dev, and we'll give this a second just to build. Actually, so we need to actually put our component into the template first, eh? Alright, so I'll just put this into a vcard as well, and then here we can have our sign in component, just like that. And I'll give this card some elevation as well, just to make it look a little bit better, plus a little bit of padding as well. Cool. Alright, so I'll just save this off, and now we'll just open back up our application. Alright, so now if I bring this over, our login page currently looks like this. I think we should be getting our email auth provider, so I'll just check what's going on there. Okay, so I see. So we pretty much got a typo here. So I've said prover ID, this should be provider. So I'll just save this off, and coming back to our application now, and we can see now we've got the sign in with email and sign in with Google. Cool. Okay, so just from here, I'm just going to try actually sign in as well. So I'm just going to use sign in with Google, and this should hopefully now, the callback should route us back to the root of our application. And of course, though, this isn't currently protected yet, but I just want to see if this goes all the way through. Alright, cool, so it does. So currently now we're able to sign in, but we don't actually hold on to the sort of state of the signed in user. So the application still doesn't know that we're really signed in. So that is what we're going to do. So now if we go to our store, we're going to create a new file here. And this is going to be called index.js for the store. Alright, now this is going to reload, because if we look at the readme here, this directory or any files you put in here are actually optional, so you don't have to use the store, but we will be. And the store for NuxtJS is actually just based off Vuex, so if you're familiar with that, it shouldn't look too dissimilar to you. Alright, so from here we're going to just create our state sort of object, which is actually we're going to export it as a function. So we'll say export const state equals, then we'll use an arrow function here, and we'll say user is false, right? So that's the sort of initial state. Okay, so with that there, we've got our initial state. So I might actually go ahead and protect the route. So I might go ahead and protect our root of our application, and also the other page that we had there as well. I think it's that sort of inspire page or something it's called, if I just get this back up. Yeah, this one here. So we're going to protect the welcome page, the root of the application, and the inspire page, okay? And the way we're going to do this is actually using something called middleware. And middleware is basically logic that we can define, which will be run every time the router navigates us to a new location or a new link or a new page like that, right? And there's various sort of stages of middleware you can use depending on the type of application you're running. If you're using like server-side rendering, the middleware will run on the server and then on the client side. But for us, being a single page application, it just gets run on the client side before it navigates to any new route. So to define a middleware, we have to create a middleware folder. So we'll just say middleware, and this should be out in the root of the application. So I'll just move that there. And now in the middleware, I'm just going to call this auth.js. And the name of the file that we put in any middleware folder is going to be the name of that specific middleware. So that sounds a bit confusing. I think it'll make sense in a moment when we actually implement it. So yeah, so with the auth.js, what we're going to want to do is just check the state of the user, and if the user is false, so not logged in, then we're going to redirect the user of the session to the login page. And we can do that by saying export default function, and that will pass in the store and redirect, and we'll say if store state user, so if false, we'll just say, I'm just going to put a log here as well, console.log middleware, and then we'll say redirect login, like that. Okay. All right, so that actually defines the middleware logic. Now we have to actually implement it on the page we want to. And you can actually put it in the nux.config here. You can like say route, you can define a router and then define your middleware here, and then your middleware will be used sort of globally when your router sort of navigates to any new link. Whatever middleware you define here will get used globally, but we just want it for specific pages today, so I'm going to go to the pages that we want. So I'll go to the index.view, and if I scroll down here, alright, so we'll just define a new script tag. So I'll just say, what do we want here? Just want a basic one. I think that'll do. And then we'll just say middleware and just auth, like that. And that should be pretty much it for that. So on the Inspire one, we'll do the same thing. Get rid of all this, don't want that. And middleware will be auth. So it's going to use the auth.js file in our middleware folder. Alright, so I'll save this off. And now if we go to our application and I try to navigate to this page, I shouldn't be able to get there. Okay, so we've got an error, so something's happening at least. Let's see what's happening here. Property or method current user is the final instance. Oh, okay, so that's okay. I think that's from our login page. So it looks like we're still actually getting here, but our middleware is not working the way it should be just yet. Alright, so I actually just cancelled the current running application just with Control-C, terminate the batch job, and then restarted it. And now it's working. I think it's because maybe we added in a couple new directories that potentially we can't just sort of save and keep going. I think it has to rebuild the app itself. So just Control-C, cancel your application, and then npm run dev to spin it back up again. And now we should be all good. So if I try to go to these two routes now, it's just not happening, so it's not letting us get there. But as you can see here as well, it's going into this in middleware function, so we can see it's actually going to the middleware. If I click on this again, in middleware, right, it's actually going there, which is good. Alright, so now we're also going to now populate this welcome field here to actually display our name when the user is signed in, and that will also get rid of this property or method current user is not defined error. Okay, so let's just go back to our login page, and now from here we're going to grab the current user from our store. So we can just say up here, we'll just say computed, and we'll say current user is return this store.state.user, just like that. And I'll just put a comma here as well. And I think we should be all good with that. So let's just try that. So I save this off and we'll go back to our application. And of course we shouldn't see anything here yet because the user is still not signed in. So I'll just try signing in again with Google. We still don't see anything, and that is, why would that be? Let me just check back on our application. We'll just check our store. So we still need to define our user object basically, and we need to do that through mutations. So these are the mutations that we defined at the start of the video. This in this nux.js.config. So this stuff here. So we just need to do that, and it's pretty much the last step I think to getting this all working. So we'll say export const mutations equals, and we'll just say on auth state changed mutation, and pass in the state and the auth user and the claims object as well. And we'll pass this out into an arrow function like that. And I'll just say, I'll see if I want to console log the, we won't bother with that. So I'll just say if auth user. So if the user is authenticated, we're going to grab the UID, the email, and display name into auth user, and then we'll say state.user equals UID email display name. And the reason why we do it like this as well is because we don't want to bind the state directly to the observer of the object basically, so because it could still change. So we'll just say here else state.user equals false, and we can just save that and we should be okay. So I think if we'll just refresh this page, and then I'll try signing in again with Google. Okay, so we're still not getting our name here, and I can't still go to the other pages, so it's still protected, so it still thinks I'm not signed in or something, right? Alright, so the issue has to be between either our store or our auth, and looking at it I can see that our store looks pretty okay if it looks like this for you as well, and our auth is simple enough, and I can tell that looks alright. So I was having a dig around just then as well, and I think the issue is in our nux.config.js, and what the issue is here is that although we've defined these actions and mutations, we haven't actually initialized them, right? So if we take another look here in the Firebase NuxtJS documentation, we do have to initialize these mutations and actions, which I didn't do here. So we'll just say here now instead, initialize, and then we'll wrap this in like that. Alright, I am actually going to get rid of actually this onAuth.change action, as we aren't using that anymore actually, so I'll just save that off. And now once this is finished building, I think we should now be okay. So I'll just refresh this page just in case, and sign in with Google. I think I just saw my name there actually. Alright, so there we go. Welcome Daniel Otto. So we've got our sign in happening. We get redirected now to the root of the application. We can go to the other page that we want to, and then it's all good. So now if I go back to login here, I can actually get here and I see my name there as well. So what we'll just do now finally is just add a sign out button so we can sort of just keep testing this, right? So if we go back now to our application, and we'll just go to the root of the application, so we'll just add another button here like this one here. So I'm literally just going to copy this, and I'll just say sign out instead, and then we just have here, instead of this Nuxt to link, we'll just say v-on click equals sign out function. So we'll just do that, and then down here we have to actually define that function. So I'll say methods, sign out, and then from here we can just say this.fire.auth.sign out. And now just lastly, we'll just relocate our window. So we'll just say window.location equals back to the login page, right? Okay, so now we'll save this off, and we'll try now logging into our application and seeing how we go. So we'll just try sign in with Google. Alright, cool, this signs us in. We can get to our pages, that's alright. I'm just going to go back to the login page, make sure our name is there. Yep. And we'll go back to the dashboard or the welcome page, and I'll just say sign out now, and we get signed out. Can't see my name there anymore because I'm signed out, and I shouldn't be able to get to these pages here, which I can't. So that is pretty much everything, I think, hey. Alright, cool. Well, that pretty much sums it all up, I think. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it's useful to you. I think it doesn't take you too long following these steps to pretty much secure your application and get authentication set up. I think it's, once you sort of understand it and you're used to it, it's pretty easy to sort of fly through it and get authentication set up for your application a lot quicker than you would having to sort of write it all out yourself. So definitely a good bonus to be able to integrate this with Firebase. So yeah. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed the video, found it useful, all that stuff, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on content just like this. Thanks, guys. See ya.